Hi, until now we have seen what are property bindings and attribute bindings. In this video, we will see how can we listen to DOM events so that by the end of this video, you will be able to know what event bindings are and their implementations. We'll see all of these with our practical examples or practical application using our poster project. So what is an event binding? Event bindings are attaching methods or functions of your component that is in your TS file to DOM events such as click, on change, input, etc. Currently, Angular supports these number of events coming from the MDN. So let's go in our VS Code and see how this works. So we are into our poster application, the poster project that we have been working on through our earlier videos. So I'll go to the components folder where we have added the header and post list components. Okay, these components have been added in from our earlier videos. So in the earlier video we have added the post object that is bound into our post list dot html using the interpolation and property binding. Okay, so here we'll add one input. Okay, let's say input. I'll add the type equals to text with a placeholder. Let's say add title. So we have added one input which says add title as a placeholder, and let's see how this looks in our browser. But before that, let me start the development server. So I'll start the development server using the npm start command. And once the development server starts, let's go in our browser and see how this is looking. So let me refresh the screen. So you can see we have one input added over here which says add title. Okay, now if I type something over here, let's say title, but how can you know that something is being typed over here or something is being added into this event? So to add that event or to know how what is being typed over here, you have to add that event binding over here, right? So you have to bind an event or bind one DOM event to this input. Okay, so Angular provides multiple input bindings. So you can see a list of all the inputs that can be bound to this input. Okay, input DOM element. So we are only concerned for now is the input, so that whenever user types anything, that means user has input anything into that input field. Okay, so I'll add input event binding over here. Now what should be the next thing is that we should have a method that should have been added from the postlist.ts file. Okay, so I'll call one method from the component from my component ts file. Okay, so I'll listen to this event in a method called input change. Okay, okay, so this method should be there in our component ts file. That's what the error says. So I'll go into our component ts file and add that method. So now the error is gone. So I'll add one console log over here, and GitHub Copilot suggests me that I should have this console as input change. So I'll accept that. Okay, so once I have added the input change and once I have bound this method to this input event coming from this input DOM element, so let's see how the if there is console log or not. So I'll open the development console. Now I'll type something over here. So I'll type title. Okay, so you can see the input change is being logged into the console. So I have typed 2 characters, so that's why you can see the 2 count over here. So if I type something else, let's say title, so these are 5 characters, so you can see the 5 consoles over here, right? So that's how the events or the events that have been added or the events that are there in the DOM can be bound to your component TS methods. Okay, so now how can I know what user has typed into this input event, right? So we are only able to get the know that user has typed something over here, but what has user types that we want to know. Okay, so we will go in our the method. So Angular provides the event objects. So whatever event that you bind into your component TS files, those events emit the event object. So that event object can be passed as a parameter from here. So I'll pass the event argument from here. Let's say event. So this is the syntax. Okay. So Angular emits this dollar event. So emits this dollar event whenever there is change in the input. Okay. So this dollar event should be added as a parameter into our the component TS file method. Okay. So I'll add the event. Okay, of type event. Okay, so this means that this event, the event that we have bound the input method, that has one argument which is known as the event, and that event can be passed by the Angular, okay, itself. So whatever user will type, that target will be sent to this argument, and that will fetch using this parameter. Okay, so now let's see what is there in our event property. Okay, event, the object. So I'll just uh, add the event into our console log. So let's go into our browser. Now let's type something over here, title. So you can see the event change is being logged. Along with that, we have the input. Okay, so this input, that means this is the DOM element where we have assigned our event, where we have attached our method. Okay, so this is the DOM element. It has all the properties that is coming from the DOM. So you can see we are concerned with the target. That means our input, our Angular input that we have added into our the component file. Okay, so this target has all the DOM properties. Okay, so we are concerned with the value. Okay, so whatever user has typed, that should be coming as a value into this target element. So you can see the value is title over here. So this is what we have typed. Okay, so this value we can extract from this object. Okay, so let's go in our method. So we can see that event has a target. Okay, and with that target we have the value. Okay, so now Angular does not directly add or does not directly identify that this event has a value into the target object. So what we can do over here is that we can identify, we can let Angular know that this event.target is an input element, right? Is an HTML input element. So we can just add as HTML input element. So now the HTML input element has a value property, so the error will be gone. Okay, so now if I go in our here, let's say title. Okay, so you can see the title is being shown over here. So that's how the event binding works. So that's how you can get the values that user has typed. Okay, using the event binding, or the whatever values the user has typed, you can get using the event.target.value. Okay, so now let's see how you can add multiple keyboard events. For example, I have added the input property over here, right? But we can have multiple combinations of keyboard events. So let's see that. Mentioned earlier, we are not only limited to add input events, right? So Angular provides more events that you can add into. So what's one such event that I'm talking about is the keyup event, right? So I can add the keyup event to this. Okay, and this is almost the same as input. So it triggers whenever you press any press any key on your keyboard. Okay, for example, let's say I have added this one. Now let's go into the browser. So whenever I type anything, let's say title, so for each keyup event, it console logs. So you can see the title over here. So for each keyup event, this consoles, this adds to this calls the method that we have added from our component ts file. Okay, so this will call this method for each keyup event, and it will have this console log, right? So whatever input event we have added, whatever input we have added inside our input, that will be triggered, that will be logged into this console. Okay, so as I was talking about the combination of keys, so we can add key up with a combination of other keys, such as when I add key up dot enter, that means whenever I type anything into this input, HTML input, okay, so after pressing the enter key, then only this function will be called, right? Then only this event will be triggered. Okay, so let's see this in an example. So you can see, let me refresh the screen again. So if I type anything, let's say title, you can see that we are not getting the console, right? Unless I press enter. So once I press enter over here, you can see the title is being consoled, right? So this is, used in many cases. So user user cannot type, user cannot call. Let's say you want to call an API, right? After user types anything in the search box or any other place where there is input, right? So user can click on enter, and then the API should be called, right? Not on every keystroke, right? So this is quite useful with the combination of keys. Okay, also one more thing that I wanted to mention about is that certain keys, for example shift key in Windows and shift or alt keys in Mac are different, right? So you can, I think, add that code over there. You can specify the key or code that you like to bind to keyboard events. The key and code fields are a native part of the browser keyboard event object. This can be useful for handling keyboard events consistently across different operating systems. For example, when using the Alt key on Mac OS devices, the key property reports the key based on the character already modified by the Alt key, right? So this means that a combination of Alt plus S reports a key and the value of a symbol that can be used in the Mac, right? But the code property, however, corresponds to the physical virtual button pressed rather than the keyboard or character pressed. So let's say you want to press the Alt and Shift left key, right? So you can add a code over here. For example, key up dot code, right? Dot Alt, or you can use Alt over here, Alt and then Shift left. So this means that the code that you have entered here is common throughout other operating systems, right? So all the operating systems will have this Alt and Shift left buttons over there. So this is basically related to virtual keyboards that you can use, or you might have seen on some banking websites, right? So this is similar to that, right? So all the banking website, all the keyboard, the virtual keyboard have the same keys, right? So the code defines those keyboard or those key events. So let me remove this for now, and we'll revert back to our keyup.enter event. Okay, and now you are also not limited to adding the events or handling the events on the input fields, right? So you can also add or handle events on the buttons, right? So let's say I'm adding a button over here. Okay, so let's say, let me add it to submit, right? The label of the button as submit, and then I can add a click event on this submit button, right? So we can add one event or the click handler, right? So whenever a button is clicked, a function should be called, or an event should be triggered from here. So I'll add that click handler over here. Okay, click, and then I'll call the function on submit. Okay, so this is my function that should be there inside the component ts file. So I'll add this function over there. Okay, so let's say this is my function, and I'll add console log dot form submitted. Okay, this is actually not a form but submitted. Okay, so let's go into the browser and see what happens. So this is our button. Okay, the submit button over here, and when I click on it, you can see the submitted is logged over here inside our console. Okay, So submitted text that we have added inside the console log, that is being logged over here when we click on this button, right? But for now, let's say I am in a form. Let's say this is a form, okay? And I'll wrap this form with along with the button, and I'll add the type over here as submit. Okay. Now what should happen? Again, when I click on the button, it should log the console as submitted. Okay. So let me refresh this screen. This should already be refreshed. Okay. So I'll just submit. So when I click on submit, right, you can see the complete screen is being reloaded again, right? So when I click on submit, you can just check it over here, right? So you can see the screen is refreshed, and all the screen is completely reloaded. So why is this happening? So this is happening because whenever I add type submit to a button, right, which is inside a form, so Angular just you know takes these forms to a development server. This is a which is our development server, right? So Angular thinks that this is a form that needs to be submitted on a server, right? But our server is our development server, right? So whenever we click on this, so this form is being submitted, right? So this form is being submitted, but where is it submitted? On the development server. That is why our whole screen is being reloaded again, right? So whenever I click on submit, you can see the whole screen is being reloaded. Okay. So how can we avoid these things? So again, we get the event object whenever we have any event handling, right? So let's say I'm passing the event object as an argument over here. Okay. So event. Okay. So this event has this the click event over here. So I'll add that over here, event. Okay. And which is of type event, because this is TypeScript, so we have to add the type to the object where we are adding the parameter of this event. Okay. So now what we can do, we can add, you can see the GitHub Copilot suggesting me that I should prevent this event, right? Because this is a submit button, so our form should not be submitted to any server, right, for now. So I'll just accept that over here. Okay. So once I have accepted that, and once I go inside our browser, so now when I click on this, you can see the console is being logged over here and our screen does not refresh, right? So that's how you can prevent an event to be submitted on any server, on any for example your development server or any backend server, right? So that's how you can avoid this the the click event or the submit event to be submitted on uh, the development server or the server that you want to add. Okay. So don't worry about the forms, right? So we will see the Angular forms in our upcoming videos. Okay. So I'll keep these things over here and push it into the branch. So you can clone the repository that is added inside the YouTube video description or in the comment. Okay. And you can just play around with the events. You can just check what all events are there, right, for which Angular provides. Okay. And you can just play around these events, add some methods over here, add some consoles or some anything that you want to add. Okay. So in our next video, we'll see what is two-way binding. Okay. Which is done along with the properties of the components or with the components itself, right? So if you have found this video helpful, you can like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.